Welcome to this week's Blockchain Gaming News Roundup, 19th of July. I'm your host, Jenny Jordan. With me, as ever, is John Jordan. Hi, John. How's your week been?
Terrible.
Terrible.
We've all been ill.
Yeah,
We've all been ill. We've all been ill with a not quite definable illness of coughing and spluttering and being sick and
much like this year, kind of story of this year, really. But I think there has actually been some evidence showing that it's not just sort of us imagining. There are more stuff going around since COVID, apparently, because our immunity is a bit low. Anyway, that's not what we're going to talk about this week. Right. Despite that, you did manage to get your report out this week, which looking at Q2 and the first half of 2024, we're going to dive deeper into that later on. But first off, we are just going to run through the headlines. So at the start of the week, we had a great, Mavens discussion. Really appreciate all the kind of industry experts that contribute to our monthly Mavens feature. This week, we looked at the question of obviously, no one could stick to sort of one factor, which is what I asked for, of all the factors to sort of consider when you choose a blockchain on which to deploy a game, which one is the most important. And understandably, it's hard to sort of pinpoint one factor specifically. But it was interesting. There was a variety of answers, not all in agreement, as is the case most of the time. So the kind of performance, such as like speed of transactions and security and scalability, but then also Robbie Ferguson contributed and Sam Barbary from Horizon, which both sort of pointed out that the team behind the blockchain and their kind of gaming experience and how focused they are on gaming actually plays a bigger part in than sort of a lot of developers would think. If it only boils down to sort of the performance and the tech, then there might not be that understanding and support that are gaming specific sort of needs that will pop up. And so really good, really recommend that. Mavens is on our website. And talking of Immutable and Robbie Ferguson, this week and the report, actually, we've seen to a lot of things. This week we published an article highlighting Immutable's kind of growth, particularly in 2024. It shows that they have added the most games of all the ecosystems. Obviously, then it comes down to kind of what about Ton? Ton has added a lot of games, that's true. But as we sort of point out when we look at this, it's a different type of games. It's kind of simple clicker, play to earn games, and they're coming and going. It's a very sort of liquid. They're just very different games to the games that the sort of deeper kind of blockchain games that a platform such as Immutable are working on. So that's why we are sort of highlighting the growth of Immutable and not necessarily comparing it to the amount of games that have launched on Ton. Also to point out that kind of a lot of the games on Ton are going into discontinued quickly because they come and they go, and a whole bunch of new games come and they go. So they were also the chain that had had most games go into discontinued during this quarter. So anyway, of the 157 new games that had been tracked by Big Blockchain Game List, which we should point out is edited by you and me as well, 16% had been added by Immutable, and those are the kind of games that are deployed to a single chain. And then there are also obviously a whole bunch of multi-chain games that are also launching on Immutable, sort of in addition to that. So that was interesting. And then Wemix has added a couple of new games during the quarter and first half of 2024. They've also had quite a lot announced as being cancelled or discontinued, though, and that is kind of part of, as we looked at this week, sort of they're refocusing their strategic branding, and whereas before they have been a lot about high volume and quantity, now they're gonna scale back and focus more on high quality games instead. Focus on sort of a fewer titles, and this was all sort of emphasized on the Wemix day that was on 16th of July this week, where they announced 4 new games joining the ecosystem, 2 of which were sort of new titles and 2 which are titles of migrating from other ecosystems. Do you want to say anything more about Wemix and the sort of new features? You know, they have the new payment system as well and reward system.
Yeah. I think it as you say, I think they've been sort of highlighting these sort of a change in strategy for a while, sort of 6 months or so, and as we sort of discussed in the past, they're a well-known South Korean games developer and publisher, done a lot of free-to-play mobile and PC games. Best known for this big PC mobile RPG called Mir, or MIR. Mir is the series, and the current one's Mir 4. So they were actually the earliest South Korean games company to announce blockchain stuff and really launch something. So that was the end of 2022, and they, their share price exploded, and that sort of meant that, because back then blockchain gaming was a big thing, even though it didn't quite sort of pan out as expected then. So actually, we made decision to get into blockchain games actually kickstarted a lot of the other South Korean games companies getting into blockchain. And even now, you could still argue that Wemix is sort of the leader in that field. You know, we've seen some companies like Netmarble sort of not quite give up, but they sort of given up on their own platform, and they've done a deal with Immutable, and we've seen other ones like Come to Us just being quite slow. I mean, I guess they would say slow and steady in terms of how they're doing stuff. Whereas we made sort of, I guess, thought in their heads, what's the quickest way we can get a lot of games live? And so their strategy really was, let's find a lot of free-to-play Web 2 mobile games, and let's stick a bit of blockchain in them by probably putting a token in and maybe some NFTs, and let's just do loads of them, because, you know, one of the ideas is if we don't really know what's going to be successful, if we can't really predict what sort of games will be successful, let's just do all the games and see what's successful. And they really did do that. So for a long time, their sort of strategy was, we want to get 100 games live. And I don't think they ever quite managed that. I mean, another thing we like is we made, and its platform Wemix, are very actually good. They're probably one of the best blockchain platforms about having a web page with all the games that they support, and they actually have, like, it actually shows you how many users are playing those games, which we've often discussed is sort of a bit odd, because sometimes there's about 12 people playing some of their games. Really, there's only 2 games with any users. They're actually quite good at taking their games off when they're discontinued. So, you know, they're sort of good practice from Wemix, even if they're, you know, I don't think, looking back now, that strategy, you know, seemed bonkers at the time. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe there was other reasons for them doing it. But anyway, as you say, they've done this big reset, and it's, you know, many fewer higher quality games. And I think that's because they've seen that of these dozens of games they've launched, probably about 80 games they've launched, the only 2 that got any traction really were Mir 4, which was a big, you know, their biggest franchise anyway, and this new game that came out in March. Was it March? Called Night Crows, which is, you know, another PC mobile MMORPG. And in both those games, most of the people playing it are not interacting with blockchain. So I play Night Crows quite a lot, or every day pretty much, and you need to get to level 35 even to be able to do the basic blockchain sort of stuff. And you need to get to level 45 to actually to import NFTs. And I've been playing it every day since it came out, pretty much, and I'm still on level 40. So, you know, it really is hard. You can't just sort of rock in, do some play to earn stuff, and make some money and rock out again. Yeah. So I think they've sort of seen from those 2 games. I wouldn't say those 2 games have been massively successful, but they've been massively successful compared to all their other blockchain games. So I think they sort of decided there's no point just doing all these hyper casual nonsense sort of games. They're just not sticky enough. They're not high quality enough. So yeah, they've just decided to do basically 2 really big MMORPGs. They won't be out till 2025. I think one's actually maybe even later than that, 2026 even, because these take years and years to build. One of which is going to be from the developers of Mia 4. So these are going to be like really big, triple A RPGs, and they've decided that's the way they're going to go, which I think actually makes sense. Bunch of other stuff. They're launching like a new token that's only sort of minted when you buy in-game items. So that's sort of like a sort of controlled token. As they point out, a lot of blockchain tokens just say we're going to mint 1 billion and then wonder why the price is all speculative. So this token's only going to be available if available through people spending money in the game. So actual real revenue is going to create this token. You use that token to buy special things in those games. So they're just making much tighter economic systems, which I think, that can still go wrong, but I think that's a much better starting point. So yeah, good luck to them. But it's not really, these 2 games aren't coming out for, a while, a couple of years.
Yeah, good. In other news, the French developer Eden Games, which is also an Animoca Brands subsidiary, is announced a new Web3 kart racer called Cosmic Royale, which is the beta is launched exclusively to Mocaverse community, or Moca ID holders and Moca NFT holders. So that's launching as part of sort of Animoca's larger Motiverse ecosystem, and it will also have the Rev token integrated, and so and then Stardust, the sort of Web3 infrastructure gaming kind of network, they've launched Starbase, which is, like you would say, another Web3 and a Web3 kind of rewards platform, gaming platform.
Yeah.
Social, sort of trying to bring in the next 1 billion players to Web3.
To be fair, they've not said that.
Well, they haven't said that, John.
They did say that.
They did say that.
Did they?
1 billion. Yeah, okay. They did. Which is ambitious. It's good. People are.
No, but it's silly, isn't it? It's just.
Okay. Not good.
I think it's a warning sign. If people say we're going to onboard the next billion, I just think they haven't got much of a clue about what's actually happening, because it's not.
They got a couple of good games to sort of launch partner games. Nifty Islands, Rapno, The Mystery Society, and so on. Apparently they're already working with 20 different games, and 25. The first 25 missions went live 2 days ago via the platform. And the kind of more interesting thing, I suppose, is they got this StarNet rewards system, which aims to sort of connect players, games, and advertisers, and service of. I mean, they'll reveal more about kind of how gems will work as a reward, but potentially working up towards some sort of token. Or
I just kind of think it's. Yeah, I mean, without being overly skeptical, I mean, I think Stardust are a very well-known brand in the. Well, not brand, technology in the space. Lots of good companies use them. I think, obviously I'm not a developer, but, they have a good reputation. It's just there's so many reward systems out there. I don't think you can say, another reward system is not going to move the needle on getting people into blockchain games. There's, if 1 billion people were going to be brought in by reward systems, it would have happened already, because we've had reward systems for the last couple of years. So all the, in that sense, the reward systems are just cannibalizing the people who are interested in reward systems. And I think we've seen, the price of tokens goes down because people do airdrops and give them away for free, and there's no reason not to just sell them straight away. So, it may be that Stardust, because they're smarter than the other people, are going to create a better sort of funnel. And, I'm not saying that they're not going to do that, but I do just think the reward system meta is sort of needs to be sort of rethought if you think it's actually going to do anything significant.
Now, I know kind of from the report and kind of going back, we're going to go in a little bit more into detail on that, but sort of that I mean, it's been a bleak sort of quarter anyway, but you have also been writing sort of what Web3 game developers are getting wrong still, a couple of years into its sort of development now. But one project you think is actually doing something right is Pirate Nation, and that sort of, in a way, goes into talking what we're talking about Stardust and rewards. And can you just delve into a little bit more what you mean about that? How sort of rewards systems should be designed, I suppose, and how you can build something more long term. Using that.
So the big blockchain game report we just launched this week for Q2, and it was, you say, pretty depressing in the sense. I mean, the main thing that happened in Q2, and it did really happen in Q1, was lots of new game tokens launched. So at least 42, more now, but 42 game tokens launched in the first 6 months of 2024. What happened in the first 3 months in Q1 is tokens launched and the price went up, and everyone's like, wow, we're printing money here. So that just obviously encouraged loads more blockchain games projects to go, let's launch a token. And what happened in Q2 was they all, the loads more launched, and the price of pretty much all of them went down. So, in a sense, this is the one thing about the quarter is about crypto prices, which clearly the game sector is more about than the price of tokens. But it is a pretty significant sort of part of it, I think, as well. And I just kind of think that, as I say, sort of developers were either greedy, desperate, or didn't really understand what they were doing, or combination of all three. And to some degree, hopefully in Q3 and Q4, people aren't launching tokens. We're not going to have this sort of greediness. That's the sort of speculative thing of blockchain. It's always there, and sometimes it's bigger than other times. But I do think there are some projects, and there are some projects that have sort of designed their economies and designed their systems in a way that means they are less susceptible to launching a token and the price dumping. Unfortunately, it kind of boils down to the fact that they don't need to launch tokens to fund their development, and that's still is sort of the biggest issue for blockchain companies in general, blockchain games companies in particular in this podcast. But most of them are not very well funded, so they, the way they can get a couple of $1 million to fund their project is to sell tokens and NFTs. But they're selling tokens and NFTs far ahead of the game actually coming out. So they're pricing these things because they know, well, we need $3 million to make our game, so we need to sell $3 million worth of tokens and stuff. But the price of the tokens they're making up because they need $3 million, they probably actually need $10 million, but they can't sell that many, so they end up with 3 in a bad product. And as soon as the token goes live, because there's no reason to have a token other than speculatively it's going to go up, if the price starts going down, everyone sells, and then the game, even if it's out, it's sort of dead. So Pirate Nation, the developer is proof of play. They're a very experienced games team, been doing it for 20 years, whatever. Raised $33 million from A16Z and other big VCs. So they don't need to sell anything to make money for their game, to fund their game. And they haven't sold anything. The NFTs were a free mint now for $5,000. The tokens were given away to people who played the game and owned NFTs and did that sort of stuff. They didn't do a token pre-sale, so no one was like flipping it. And they also structured the token release that basically the easiest thing to do was stake it to get points for another token that's coming further down the line. So there is a speculative sort of thing in there, maybe. But I think that having that sort of process just means that people have a lot of now confidence in that team. The game, it's not changing the face of gameplay, but it is quite an interesting, fully on-chain game where you do battles. It's a card-based game. You do turn-based battles as a pirate fighting other ships. You get some materials, some resources for that. You then spend those resources doing other missions that give you other resources. You can then craft things using those sort of materials. You can then sell those on a marketplace. That marketplace is priced in ETH, so it's not using the pirate token. The pirate token isn't really used at this stage. It will be, I'm sure, as the project goes on, but the moment you use it to buy these gems, which are another off-chain currency system. So in every single way, I think they've structured their game that if people want to buy these assets, which are now quite expensive, then they're doing it. Maybe they think the price is going to go up, but the developer's not said we launched these at $1,000, so if they're now worth $100, everyone's going to be complaining. They've basically we gave it away for free. If the market now says they're $5,000, then okay, that's what the market says. We're not, it's not our price. I think that's still really the the meme at the moment is the sort of the original sin. The original sin of blockchain gaming is blockchain game companies sell NFTs at $100 and then wonder why no one's interested in the game when the NFTs are now worth $5. I mean, and that's. I think there are some projects that have got away with it, certainly in the early days, but I just don't think now you can get away with projects sort of selling tokens or NFTs at a price that they have no idea if that is a price that's going to sustain their project and sort of allow people to build a community around that. You really have to let the community price your projects, which sort of means for most people, I think the easiest way is you have to give them away for free. And that means in most cases, you need other levels of funding, which you're only going to get if you're an experienced team who knows, big VCs. So I can sort of see why we are where we are. And that's maybe good for experimentation. All these sort of crypto speculative, teams are launching tokens and, that's the great experiment. Maybe a few of those projects will come out and do something. But just the attrition rate in that sort of sphere is just going to be absolutely massive. So that's sort of, and I think there are other projects. I won't go into all of them, but another one like Asra Games. We don't really know 2 years on what its game's called. I think it was Legions and Legends at one point. I think maybe they've changed that. But again, they raised $35 million from A16Z. They do have an NFT out there, but it's just like a PFP. They don't talk about tokens. They don't. There's no game to play. So obviously that's an extreme. You're not going to be many companies who can have that sort of level of revenue. I guess the ones that I'm a bit less sure about are people like Parallel, who have raised a lot of money but have still sold NFTs and tokens, and tokens have gone up and down. And I think you really, in the ideal situation, you raise $10 million to make a game, the token goes live a year after your game's gone live, and you have revenue, and sort of how to price these things or give them away.
Yeah. So not a great sort of quarter in terms of tokens, and maybe it's not the best way really to build stability into your project. It's sort of one quarter massively up, next quarter you can't rely on that as a game developer, really.
Well, I think the other issue is talking about a billion people onboarding to blockchain games. If they've basically burnt I don't know, a few thousand crypto investors who've sort of said, "Oh, games are the big thing now," because people like me have been telling them that for years, and they go, "Oh, these tokens are going live. I'll buy some of these tokens because the tokens are going to go up," and then they've lost all their money. Then that's just that's bad for the sector, isn't it? You're not onboarding people who've lost any sort of money. They just go, "These guys are all scammers. I'm not going to get involved." And I think, to a degree, some of the tokens, I'm not saying there's necessarily scams, but maybe they're just totally inexperienced teams. But we've just seen it so often. Really inexperienced teams get over their heads. They can raise a few $1 million just by talking to some KOLs and doing a pre-sale, and then you can just see from there the way they just do their marketing on Twitter, or the way they say, "We've raised $10 million," and it transpires that's $10 million over 5 years, or they're just really loads of bad practice that you just don't want to see.
What we're seeing more is sort of like going back a little bit to what you said about Wemix before, and kind of their, Night Crows, for instance, which has sort of hundreds of thousands of users, of which only maybe roughly 5% are integrating on the blockchain or so.
A few thousand, yeah.
Similar to kind of NFL rivals, but if you get a good game out there that people want to play, and then you also have a deeper sort of blockchain economy that people can interact with, and people will want to be incentivized to interact with as further into the game as they sort of get, then we will see that mass onboarding is just going to take a lot of time. But maybe sort of game developers just have to learn to be a bit more patient. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think maybe I don't think this is necessarily not 100%, but I think the axis has, or the pendulum has swung back much towards teams who know how to make traditional game makers are going to be the companies that are going to make this a success. There's going to be loads of interesting crypto only, native, fully on chain, blast farming, and you can argue that's been another, we don't maybe cover that so much, but there's been quite a lot of interesting stuff in that sort of field. But as we've always said, the problem with those sort of games is that they tend to appeal to about 1,000 people who are really into crypto, and they don't expand. I mean, Pirate Nation is interesting in the sense that it's a fully on-chain game, and they haven't put out any proper figures, I don't think, but there is a dashboard actually somewhere. I think they've had tens of 50,000 players or something, 50,000 wallets. Obviously, probably a whole bunch of bots, as we always know. But I think they are the biggest fully on-chain game, and I don't think that's because the way they structured it. I don't think the fact that their NFTs are now worth $5,000 and the price of the token has gone up 200%. I don't think those are coincidences. I'll put it that way. But.
No, you point something interesting out there. Kind of, there are loads of websites out there that are sort of either GameFi or DeFi or a merge between them two sort of thing. Whereas that's not actually the kind of most interesting thing. Are those sort of maybe completely native Web3 projects that aren't games first, but the games first that can also integrate blockchain cleverly. Those are sort of the ones with the sort of greatest potential, I suppose, to be sort of sustainable in the long term. If you know what I mean.
I think the fundamental thing that all blockchain game developers are trying to solve is you're basically creating a bunch of digital assets that you want people to treat as you want people to have to treat as valuable. Now, that could be sort of financial value, that could be sentimental value. Value could be chopped up in different ways. But in order for that to happen, then people have to have long-term interactions with those game systems to sort of understand what the value of one token or this NFT character. The value can't be because the game developer sold this character for $1,000. That can work for a certain period of time. I guess we've seen everything, Bored Apes and whatever's. But over time, the players will have to value what that asset is, and that can only happen because they're playing it 5 hours every day, and they have all their friends in the game, and they're also spending fiat money to do some other sort of things that aren't attached to the blockchain, and at that point, some of the assets the market will go, this is worth $100,000 because there was only one of them, and it's got this kit out, and it was involved in this raid, and but that takes years and years and years, and I think just the trying to it has worked for various periods of time when crypto has been hot, that people have been able to go, developers have been able to go, there's only one of these, so it's worth $100,000. I mean, Animoca sort of did that with its F1 racing cars to some degree, and that sort of worked in the sense that they sold them. But clearly, I mean, that game just didn't work because they lost the license and those, Whereas when people say, a CSGO skin is worth $1 million, which people have said, that's not because Valve sold it for $1 million. It's because it came out of a gacha box, and it happens to be a rare one, and the market has valued it at $1 million. I mean, it seems preposterous, but I think the speculative side of blockchain has been a sort of a double-edged sword, and it's allowed people to generate money, to raise money for their games, but that's meant it's almost impossible for them to actually work out what the value of these things should be, or the community to do so, because all that happens is the price goes massively down and everyone goes, I don't want to touch that game, I lost $1,000 playing it or whatever. So I think that's the continual learning process that we're going through.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. If you want to read a full Q2 2024 report, you can go on bigblockchaingamelist.com, and if you want to hear more of John's opinions, you can go to
surely no more
the Substack Games TX. No, but you did write that Pirate Nation one this week. You just have regular analysis of the industry, which I think is useful for people, and you offer a lot of sort of sober views on the market, which is very up and down. Right, on that note, we are going to finish off. So we'll thank you very much and see you all next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.